Death and destruction after a bomb blast at a candidate's office in Balochistan province. These are the conditions Pakistan's elections are being held under. No one has yet claimed responsibility. In the past, Balochistan has seen attacks carried out by separatists. The UN Commissioner for Human Rights has expressed concerns over violent incidents ahead of this vote. There have been attacks on political parties and candidates. The UN Commissioner has called on authorities to ensure a free and fair vote.
We are here to present an election where no one's life is under threat. You can cast your vote to anyone. You are free to do so. The armed forces and police will be present for your safety.
Ballot boxes and ballot papers sealed and under high security. With more than 120 million people eligible to vote, this is a huge task. More than 90,000 polling stations have been set up across Pakistan. National and provincial seats will be decided in this vote. But with security threats in some areas, it's the military that's providing the security. But it's also the military that's been accused of interference. 650,000 military, police and paramilitary have been deployed for this election. Under Pakistani law, there is no campaigning in the 24 hours before the vote. And on election day, there are limits around polling stations for canvassing.
This is the bag with the ballot papers. They will not be opened. They are sealed inside and will only be opened in the presence of polling agents. The elections will be fair.
The run-up to this election has been controversial, with the leader of the main opposition, Imran Khan, in jail. This is being viewed by many as the most sensitive election in recent Pakistani history. International observers as well as international media are present to take a close look at how free, fair and transparent voting will be. Asad Beg, Al Jazeera, Lahore, Pakistan.
We're staying with the situation in Pakistan. Zishan Salahuddin is the director of the Centre for Regional and Global Connectivity at the Tabadla think tank. He's with us live from Islamabad. A very warm welcome to the programme. So Pakistan appears to be facing multiple security threats at the moment from the Pakistani Taliban after the relationship between the government and the Pakistani Taliban broke down a few years ago. And now, of course, separatists in Balochistan. What does all of this mean for the elections?
It's not going to have a tremendous impact on the elections. Remember that this is not a particular moment in time in which these attacks and this kind of violence has been witnessed, particularly in the northern part of Balochistan and the southern part of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. That's the other province bordering Balochistan that has seen in the past a range of attacks and terror activities that have disrupted everything from the polio campaign to security personnel guarding the elections. The TTP, of course, their stated objective is to demoralize the law enforcement agencies in Pakistan, but they have made it very clear that they have no intention of targeting electoral staff, political rallies, or parties. Their targets will remain the law enforcement agencies, paramilitary and military personnel in Pakistan. The bigger problem, though, is the ISKP. The Islamic State is no longer really in the zeitgeist of Western media, but in this part of the world, it's still very much a present problem. And they are principally responsible for targeting the JUIF political party rallies, as you mentioned in your introduction. And finally, the third group that we should be paying attention to is the Jamiat Ulema, whose stated objective is, in fact, to try and disrupt the elections because they consider that democratic process to be anti-Islamic and against the values and the ideology that group stands for. But all things considered, elections by and large should not be affected by what has transpired, the very horrific incidents that have happened today.
Given the security concerns are, as you've said very, very clearly, very complicated, coming from multiple directions, from multiple organisations, I wonder to what extent the response to this is joined up between, let's say, the police, the government, and, of course, the very powerful and influential military in the country.
I think all three are on the same page in terms of ensuring that the elections happen without too many untoward incidents. Some level of electoral violence is expected because party workers that are very staunchly supportive of their leaders and their political parties will inevitably clash. But those are smaller skirmishes that don't really result in loss of property and or life. The bigger problems are these three groups. And as far as these three groups are concerned, all three are misaligned with the police, with the military, and with the government of Pakistan. By virtue of that, as Kamal said in his introductory remarks, that 650,000 law enforcement personnel have been deployed across Pakistan. The real problem here is that the law enforcement, by virtue of being spread out so thin, does then become a soft target, particularly for the TTP, the JUA, and the ISKP. They are very aware of this. They've taken all necessary precautions and measures to ensure the damage is minimized. But what happens tomorrow is only going to unfold as the day progresses, and the 128 million eligible voters of the 250 million population of Pakistan go to the polls.
Yeah, it's an extraordinary feat of democracy if it's able to take place without any major security threats. But meanwhile, of course, the political turmoil in the country continues following the arrest of the former Prime Minister Imran Khan, along with other scandals that have dogged Pakistani politics in recent years. How confident are voters that this election will bring about meaningful change and, importantly, stability?
I think it is a situation in which the sense of hope that some might feel is undercut by the practical reality of what is happening on the ground. The former Prime Minister, Mr. Imran Khan, leader of the very powerful and very popular Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, the PTI party, has been handed multiple jail sentences in just days leading up to the polls, resulting in a grand total of 24 years behind bars, which leads the vast majority of his supporters to believe that these elections are not free, that they are not fair. But despite that, what I would say is that the fight is far from over, because even then, Pakistan, being a very richly democratic country, has multiple political parties that are still vying for the so-called throne. Principal among them, the Pakistan People's Party and the Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz, led by the three-time former Prime Minister, Mr. Nawaz Sharif. And inevitably, for both of these parties, they don't really have the numbers to be able to garner 134 seats in the center. That's what you need in order to form the government. So they will need to form some level of coalition and will really need to fight it out in the polling stations in terms of the votes cast for them to be able to form a stable government. And that, of course, is the principal requirement for any kind of stability, both economically and politically in the country for the next 5 years.
OK. Zishan Salahuddin, many thanks for joining us on Al Jazeera.
Thank you for having me.